Hello.
Hey, Samir, I'm trying to get Mohammed in this room.
Okay, take your time.
Okay.
Hello, Samir.
Oh, hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I hope everybody gets the message in time. Did you guys get the new calendar invite?
Uh,
Mm,
I just clicked on the latest email with a new link.
yeah, I only replied to the email, not send it to the group IO.
I
Should I?
updated I updated the calendar invite, so if you
Oh,
don't mind.
Manoj is also here, so we are good.
Yeah,
Hey,
Manoj got
Hey,
it
Manoj.
now. Perfect.
hey
Hello,
Samir.
Manoj.
Hi
Hey.
Mohammed.
Hey.
Morgan.
Ah,
Good.
just Friday afternoon is always like the end of the day, but you're tired.
I don't know. These days, everything is becoming longer and longer. Days, weeks. I'm sure you guys are seeing the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah. So I updated the calendar invite the last minute because the old link that I used to have working stopped working. So Hanjin came to the rescue and gave me his CFM link, and I put it in the updated all the events. But so I saw um, Mitch just joined, and I'm hoping others will join as well.
Yeah, the first link wasn't any good, but that's okay. They have to check their mailbox.
Yeah, it's a rusty Zoom. I need to talk to Kevin and see why it expired, or maybe we haven't used it for a while, so it kind of expired. I
Yeah.
used the same one that we used in the past, but it's been more than a year since we last used it. So my intent here is, I'm hoping more people will join. Here we go. We got Sakul. Uh, maybe I should send a message to everybody. Let me do that. Uh,
By the way, today I do have a hard stop at 1:30, but
No
hopefully that will.
problem. It should be a short meeting. All I
Okay.
want is guidance
Yeah.
on what we want to do, and then if this meeting time is good or not. Um, what I'm looking for is next time we'll be ready with me summarizing my understanding of the requirements, and
Mm.
for both extended connectivity as well as CMA, and give you kind of an overview of what I believe the ecosystem has in terms of silicon, what and disclose openly what Seagate has done so far, right? We have the FPGA still working, still a platform that gives us 200, 400 and around 450-ish nanosecond connectivity for 2 ports. We worked diligently for the last couple of years um, on investing in new silicon that gives us more ports, right? So and that basically we ran into some packaging issues, right? So we have our partners and us ran into some issues with that, but we are still working towards a solution, and we want to get this year a solution to keep the momentum that's already been driven for pooling and sharing. And I think it would be nice if that solution Because of the delays that we went through, we were looking for features like compression, like caching, caching other media to make it look like, 99.9% of the time, intelligent caching can give you, can change SLC cache or TLC cache even into shared memory that the OS will discover as pure memory. So a lot of this stuff was additional features that are very complex and very hard to accomplish in silicon. But now that we ran into a lot of problems trying to boil the ocean and do all this stuff together in that piece of silicon, we have another option of going and producing something more modest, something that gives us the multi-port, the number of ports we need, up to 8, which is what Microsoft looked for. And that would not have the same feature rich, but it would be, ready to fill the gap, right? Until we have something that has more features. So I basically will talk more about that. I would like to have CMAC here and others who were vested into this, including Pankaj. So we want to make sure that we send the right note for people to participate in the CMA again, because we're not creating a new CMA where it's all the same subgroup. We want people to revise their group IO membership, like all of you did already, and we want to make sure that people are willing to call in at Friday afternoon because it works for Samir and Manoj and others. So we will talk more about what's coming and when it's coming. We will talk about, potentially the requirements and whether we can actually have initial phase requirements and then next phase requirements, partition it into a way that makes it more doable, because at least unless somebody wants to surprise us and say, hey, we got a better silicon solution for you. If that's the case, we will take it, right? But we first need to set the stage on requirements that we can achieve. I'm going to shut up now and let you guys respond.
So I think what I can say is, I mean, you phrased it very well. Uh, the 8-node system is something that we are looking for. I think the bigger challenge is on the connectivity side,
Right.
the retimers and the cables and the adapters. I think that should be the focus, and ecosystem around the ecosystem, right? Because things that you design for one doesn't work with another vendor's host, and again there are Lenovo's and Supermicros, and everyone has different type of connectors. So yeah, we have to go with an efficient, standardized solution that can work across the industry, whether for x86 or ARM-based host servers.
So Samir, I understand the importance of that, but those are two separate entities and two separate discussions. Should we merge them into the same meeting so that we don't get people busy with two separate meetings? Should we have discussions on the silicon, the software, and the connectivity? Because we are doing work on AOC, on optical, linear optics, linear CRT-based optical modules, right? That are leveraging Ethernet technology for PCI. So in the PCI SIG optical working group, they went and they wanted to keep the CDFB being the cable and put the clocks in there for every by 2 and stuff like that. I feel for us to become a CXL fabric that has optical connections that are affordable, we have to tie ourselves to Ethernet, and we have to sacrifice common clock and go with SRAS or SRNS, right?
Mm.
PCI is capable, and we're testing it right now. We actually have cables from a vendor. We're looking at from actually two vendors, and we're going to test them with an active card on the host that basically drives clean signal all the way to the linear optical driver. And then on the receiver, we're going to test it with our chip sitting very close to the connector. So hopefully that way it's not troublesome. But the problem you end up with is if you have a retimer or a switch or anything in the middle, it has a latency, even as small as 20 nanosecond round trip. It's added latency that we shouldn't deal with, right? So
Yeah. So let me just add one thing. So I think this is the analysis we all need to do collectively and send a message whether we want to live with copper based or optical based, and if retimers, what is the spec for that retimer, and come with a common framework of connections, right? Connecting host with the memory pool, a standardized approach. Right now, what I'm literally facing is something that works with Lenovo server, doesn't work with Supermicro server, doesn't work with our own Azure servers, right? So because every server has different length internally from the CPU to the adapter, and if you look at all that signal integrity budget, we have issues. So uh, that's why I think a standardized approach is good, and then we can focus on silicon as a separate stream if you prefer. But for me, I think silicon is something that we have discussed many times, and this is one area that has been consistently neglected. People think retimers, but earlier retimers were not good. The new ones have come, they work with particular vendor, doesn't work with all the vendors. So I would say this is a gap area right now, rather than the silicon. uh, so that's my take here.
no, I agree. I think your statement regarding connecting within a server from Lenovo, from IBM, from Dell, everybody has different amount of trays. And if you try to do a linear driver that doesn't have the retimer in it, and if you don't sacrifice that, right? If you don't sacrifice and put the retimer in there, then you end up with that uncertainty. However, if we can go to the server team and work with them on a solution that says this server is pooled memory ready or pooled memory, this standard contribution
Mm.
that we come up with allows us to plug a cable, just like you plug a USB and it works.
Yep.
You can plug a copper or optical cable and it should work, right?
Correct.
I think that is an effort we're willing to take on as a team, as
Mm.
as an enablement strategy, because I think we have to. You just,
Mm.
counting on 12 inches of trace and then putting another passive card to get out, even if you cable it, even if you do whatever, you're just killing your budget, right?
Correct. And see, sometimes the cable can be on the front or the back, and if it has to make a round trip from
Is-
front to back, you're just killing yourself, right? So these are the
Right.
kind of things
So
we
I'll
need.
bring a summary of what we came up with in the
Mhm.
extended connectivity group before, and we released the requirement spec. And we can actually start from there. We can talk a little bit about silicon, and then we can talk about that.
Mhm.
And then I think Mitch put something in the comment. Let me see what he was pretty much need work
Yeah,
with.
yeah, Mohammed, I mean, the SIG is really driving this. And you say USB, it's all within some consortium. Are you proposing that the OCP start yet another one?
Well, the SIG is working. The SIG is working, but are they working the issue of an edge card, or are they working the issue of a cable? Right? That's what worries me, because the PCI SIG, continue to think about common clocks, continue to think about all the PCI stuff, and they want to come up with, like I worked within the
Right.
optical.
Okay. So if it's not the SIG, then it would be the CXL consortium, which then fundamentally has to decide if they're, and this would be a CMAC, and that, you know, are they going to move CXL off of the PCI Express physical layer?
I don't
And
think now, because it will make all the available silicon obsolete. It will slow us down if we wait for CXL to adopt Ethernet 5s, then we're dead in the water for the next 3 years on getting CXL back
well,
into the picture.
well, in my mind, another standard is as hard to get going, but an engineered solution is what, and that's what Liquid is pursuing today, is a third-party engineered solution, and that can all be made to work. However, to try to turn it into something that and I can just tell you the monumental effort it takes to approach every OEM and try to get them on board.
We don't want to approach every OEM and put them on board. We want to go to the OCP server group and say, we want to contribute an ideal external connected CXL server platform design that allows us to have very closely placed cages. So the server cost is not that much because you don't have to add cards. You don't have to add, just like we did one time with a lot of the plans that were built around what was it called? The MCHS server that was contributed for high performance computing, right? So if we can actually come up with a blade or a server blade or one U server that has 8x8 or 4x16, very closely positioned to the socket, then you don't have to put a retimer on that. You just put them very close to the socket, you route them to that socket, and now you plug an Ethernet cable as is in SRAS mode without common clock, without a reset, and it works. I've done it, and it works without all this additional burden of waiting for the SIG to approve it.
I think it's going to take one of the larger entities in the OCP that would get behind it.
Yeah.
In other
And
words,
we got two large entities here, right?
if whoever they are willing to fund it, then that usually drives the OCP specs.
I agreed. If we're willing to design and contribute a server platform architecture that would facilitate connectivity, external connectivity of CXL, then that makes sense.
So like this validation would require buy-in from one or two or multiple CPU suppliers to validate that their chip is no longer going to, their CPU is no longer going to be validated only against the PCI Express spec.
Well, no, the PCI Express spec allows for SRAS.
Well, these are down at the bare at the electrical level.
Right, but at the bare electrical level, everybody, including AMD and Intel and ARM, they have to support SRAS and SRNS. It's part of their spec and common clock, right?
We run it today. We run it today.
Right. So we run it today as well. We run it with 1 meter and 3 meter cables. Now the question is, are they willing to say this server, because of its external connectivity, because we want to use the cheapest cables we can get a hold of, which are shipping in the tens of millions, we can actually make this work for CXL. Instead of changing CXL and slowing things down. I'm sorry, Manoj, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's a terminology, and maybe Samir can comment it a little bit more better than me. Does this require a server specification, or is this something that you're thinking of, like maybe a card that allows you to connect it to outside, like, like what
Well, the
did it
problem
even
is you want to
yeah.
connect to the CPU. The CPU has 64 lanes of CXL, and they need
Right,
to get out. They need to
right.
get out, right? And you don't want to add anything in the middle
Mm.
between them and the pool, because every 20 nanosecond makes it harder for us to make it look like an expansion card, right?
Right. I was just trying to see maybe something to think about, basically how to make it
So,
easier to adopt rather than requiring a
correct. So maybe, there can be an intermediate step instead of going to this Ethernet again. Mohammed, you can educate me later. Maybe stay with PCI for now, and just suggest a modification to the existing server in terms of having a connector closer to the CPU, and then an adapter that goes into the connector. That can help. And then the step two would be what Mohammed is suggesting, right? So they're not doing big change to the server. We're only suggesting bring a connector closer to CPU. Currently, they're all at the edges, right? Either for SSDs or some other PCI cards. Uh, so if it is closer to the CPU, then it helps. Uh, and then adapter and how the cable comes out. So that's more about the physical thing. But those are the modifications we can suggest for now.
But then let's say we have a chem connector that's close
Mhm.
to the CPU, right? And now we have a passive card that on think about it as a riser board, right? That has a OSFPXD, CDF, whatever it is, but we want to pick the connector, the socket that is used in volume. And then we put that in there with a linear driver. If we put it with a linear driver, we cut the latency out of the game and we end up with just the speed of light, right? The length of the cable. We can actually tell them to put it close, but isn't that actually creating a one solution that works? And wouldn't it be better to ask for just eliminating that extra card? Because that extra card may break us, right? May require us to put a retimer back in there. And the retimers have been nothing but a nightmare when it comes to us validating. We validated 5 different vendors of retimers. Everyone had a different problem, right? And the first generation, it was a nightmare. We spent time after time trying to look
Yeah.
at bifurcation, look at all the situations, and every time there was
So,
a bug.
so Mohammed, why not we do this? I don't know whether we have to onboard all these platform guys, CPU guys, maybe a small team which is focused on memory pooling. Suggest these modifications, and it's up to the implementers. If Azure wants to implement it for our Azure server design, we will pick some of these suggestions. Same thing Meta can do, right? So we can reduce some logistics on taking everyone, whoever is interested in implementing something like this should go with these suggestions.
I agree. I think that's a good step. So, we can invite the group of server vendors from the server team, talk to the server leads, and see if we can have a common meeting at some point. I do have a presentation that's ready to explain all that, the challenges we ran into, the difficulties we ran into. We can state that we can start with, the ideal world request and see what they come up with, right? They potentially can come up with a viable solution, smarter than us, right? They're server guys. So I'm a storage guy and learning memory, right? So it really is to our advantage to be somewhat theoretical and ask, or naive, right? And ask for the server guys to help us get to a pooled environment. Because if we wait for CXL to change to an Ethernet PHY, we delay CXL. And that
Yeah.
really makes it makes this thing not workable. Might as well start working on UAL or something else, right?
I agree. Yeah, that part is
Hey
we
guys,
have to stay.
sorry, I have to drop off.
No problem, Manoj. I appreciate
Okay,
your
but I'll
feedback.
catch up. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
and we'll continue this discussion. I'll in email, and we'll
Yes.
provide you what the next steps are.
Thank
So
you, guys.
again, I personally will commit to do that presentation. I will commit to summarizing what we did on the expanded connectivity. I will kind of give a next time we meet where we want to do. There are NDA issues, so we have to be careful with the silicon. But we will talk about reducing our feature set that we want to do the ideal world, and start putting some charter, some roadmap or goals that will help us get things done this year if we can get some prototypes done this year. And I think that's my goal. I don't want us to wait longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
think
want,
simplification is the key. More features you cut and just focus on the old aspect of the memory. I think that will help.
that's good. So Samir, do you have a suggestion of people we should invite to the next meeting from the server guys? Do you have a representative from Microsoft on the server team?
Uh,
I can look for names.
I don't know who that person is.
I can look for names and ask for while we're waiting for next Friday. I'll try to invite the right people, including if they accept, right, to hear us
Yeah,
out and say this is a challenge. We need to create a CXL pooling friendly blade or server, whatever works, right? Whether it's a bladed system that enables us to do this, or a server, one use server, or whatever it is, right? They need to guide us. We're not the server people, but we need to explain our pain points and the problem and let them innovate on solutions.
yeah, that's a good suggestion. Anyone HPs and Dells, I think HP is quite active on CXL. So if you have
Yeah.
any connections, you can invite them.
The problem is, I understand Mitch's concern. We don't want to overstep, right? We want to take. We're not saying to the SIG, hey, we're not going to follow your lead. But the problem is, the SIG can call out a connector, but they're not really thinking about what that does to all of us, right? I tried to explain that in the optical working group. Nobody was willing to listen because first thing I said is we need to take a subset. The minute I said subset of what qualification of PCI is, I lost people because some people are purists. They don't want to allow for only SRS and SRNS. They want it to allow the full spectrum. But within OCP, we can elect to just design things that are cableable, more friendly for cost-effective cabling. And that's really the difficult piece.
Yeah.
And I know, Mitch, that Liquid used what's defined, and you guys ship product as a startup should, right? But doing it at scale.
Well, whenever you say server suppliers, that's the OEMs are one group, and then they're the large hyperscale entities. And just my knowledge of 23 years at HP is that they move very, very slow.
Yep.
Very, very slow.
100%. I agreed.
So at any rate, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. You got to have the CPU guys on board because you're a new electrical load.
Of
It's
course.
different. And of course, the old rule of thumb, and this is what Liquid has battled forever, is that just shipping that reset domain, power cooling reset domain out of the box is just, even though, that's just a huge challenge.
Yeah.
So
So
not buffering it is kind of like, and we're qualifying light intelligence right now, linear drive.
yeah, I have their cables. I have coherent cables. I have other people's cables. there are a lot of people who want to do this because they feel it's the right thing to do if we want to get on board with the same physical
Well,
connection.
yeah, and it's hard for me to gauge what the OCP really does because it's driven successful OCP projects are driven by the entities that need the standard. And
Correct.
and and so that I can show you the projects that don't have an entity behind them driving them and they don't really go anywhere. And then
Hmm.
the ones that have, it's really a forum to do an engineered solution for a certain, they're almost got to the point though where their volumes are, they don't even need OCP. We're really in that space headed for almost pure bespoke in whenever you look at NVIDIA's stuff.
Right.
After the
In
fact, they
that
roll it
case,
out as a kind of a quasi standard.
yeah, the problem is if we're not careful, we'll end up with different solutions for everybody, right?
Yeah,
But if
it's
you
already there.
right, and that's what's happening because everybody wants to act fast. But if we want to solve it for the hyperscale and limit that for pooling, with people who want to think about sharing and pooling, because at this point, I don't know if you saw, a lot of people are starting to bring sanity back to the game. That just there's not enough memory to throw inside the server, each server to size it as a cookie cutter, right? The bare metal server cannot continue the way it is. It just
Yeah.
efficiency,
No, yeah,
there's not
we've
enough
been
stuff. So we
we've
have
been
to create
chasing
it,
that since Mike Krause and Gen Z. So
right?
it just takes a while to come to fruition.
I agree, but I've done it before. I was the guy who wrote the first specification on SBB. I don't know if you remember SBB, Storage Bridge Bay. It was a storage thing that had the server. It was a server inside the storage, right? And got Intel, got ARM and AMD, and got all the storage guys, including EMC and IBM and all this stuff. We got together, we took a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and said, this is SBB. And those are the things we want to come into the storage and out of the storage. And we defined SBB. It took us 18 months, but we had a specification that shipped millions of those cards and made a lot of people a lot of money until today as people ship SBB in storage. So it could happen, right?
It can happen,
I've done
certainly.
it before,
Yeah.
but it will take the will to do it and the will from the server guys to play in it. That's why I keep saying a blade, because I believe modifying a full server may not be the right answer, but modifying a blade, creating a blade form factor
Well,
may.
that goes down this whole path about form factors and where it's going. And so that's we've been working at this and predicting it for the 10 years now. And what happens to the rack server form factor and what happens to the CIM slot and so on. This is all very, very big things that will happen soon. And we'll see where it goes.
We're gonna have to try, right? If we can create a blade. Sorry, Samir, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a suggestion. I think right now, waiting for other people who may not see a need for something like this, doing on an urgent basis, right? Because why we have assembled right now together is because we are working on this thing and we see there is a need for this. Others may not see it. So if you start bringing people from server team, they are saying, why am I here? What is it that we're trying? So we'll waste a lot of time just to bringing on those people on same page. So why not we work on this blade architecture and suggest it in such a way that existing servers can adopt it. I think that's a first step. And if we need, we can call them in one-off meetings. But this small group of people, I think, is good enough to drive some. And again, we can publish it through OCP, CMS, or whichever entity, and then let people decide, right? If
So we need a partner. So, from my past experience, there are multiple vendors of blade servers, right? IBM did a blade server, Dell did a blade server, different people, Lenovo did a blade server. It was a hype of blade servers. They the blade server on the backplane connections happen to be different until there's an OCP blade server that I don't have all the details on, but I know there is a bladed OCP blade server. If we can take that and maintain all the connectivity to the backplane and all the blade server complexity and define what we're looking for a blade that is optimized for CXL. That's what I'm looking for. So,
actually, I'm thinking differently.
okay,
We are not looking at blade servers at this point. We are looking
okay,
at standard
servers.
one-stop servers,
Well,
because
that
we don't want to force another requirement to our data center guys. If you want to support pooling, you need to go with blade servers. They will not accept that. So we want to take existing servers, whether one socket, two socket,
okay.
and
So
put a
one,
card in it, and then go from there.
but that means we need to partner up with somebody, right? With one of the server vendors who's willing, who serves the OCP,
Mhm.
and um, and that one U server, single socket, dual socket, and designers, right? The people who sell them in the hyperscale ODM, or not necessarily the enterprise stuff, but the
Yeah.
ODMs who are selling you servers. Though we need a partner. We need one guy
Mhm.
to believe in our story and say, yes, I'm willing to go invest and build a prototype for you.
Okay. But does OCP not release a spec for a standard server, not blade server?
If it's non-blade, right, then it would be a standard motherboard, and you need to be a standard motherboard server, motherboard guy like Foxconn or Inventec or WeWin or any of those guys who build servers. And we need to convince one or multiple people of those guys that they're willing to go design and build a prototype for us that is based on an OCP requirement spec that has that capability, that puts the cards
Yeah.
or the connectors close to the CPU.
Yeah.
So it would help that we exchange some emails and um, with those hyperscale motherboard builders, right? And we need to include people like Intel. Maybe Reddy can help us include the right people from Intel and AMD, and potentially get that story, the right people on that. I I'm not you know shy of asking. If somebody says no, that's fine, right? We at least try.
Okay. Maybe what would help is, looks like you have done a lot of work already. Let's go with your presentation next
Okay,
time. That will educate all of us. What you have found, because I have a certain thing in mind. I'm even thinking retimers or even the redrivers. You may not be thinking retimers, right? So we have to be on the same page first,
perfect.
together.
Let's have our first meeting
Right?
internally
One,
within this
yeah,
group,
correct.
and
Yeah,
maybe invite just enough of the group that we had before on the extended connectivity, right? Because
yeah,
that brings all the cable guys, the optical guys, people who should tell me, hey, Mohammed, things changed since we last talked, or whatever. I'd like to hear it from them, right? So I will try to work with Kevin on combining a group and sending the next invite.
okay,
All right.
cool.
So is there any other hyperscaler we should be inviting here to this next meeting?
I think, see, there are two entities here, right? CXL expansion and CXL pooling. And this can help both. If
Right.
you're designing that adapter, maybe same specification can be for CXL expansion card that goes inside the server or the pooling. So yeah, meaning Meta is looking at CXL memory, so maybe they will be interested in at least an expansion that is in public domain, right? So and Alibaba's, I think they have done a lot of work. If they have any US presence, we can invite them.
Sure. All right. Sounds good. Any other suggestions?
No, I think first let's come on the same page with respect to everything.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And let's happy Friday, I guess, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for putting
thank
it
you.
together, Mohammed. This is
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, thanks for having.
All right, folks. Thanks.